Hey guys, so we're going to cover setting up Kafka. We're going to cover setting up and installing a single node Kafka testing instance, and we're also going to we're going to set up a simple Kafka cluster. However, full disclosure, before you watch this video, this is going to fail. I mean, we actually successfully set up the single node instance, and that's a nice demo and everything. But when we get to the cluster, our instructions are wrong, and the way we set the demo actually goes horribly wrong. But we did do a lot of interesting testing that you might want to follow along with, and you might want to watch out of curiosity and see how some of this works. But do be aware before you watch this video that the cluster portion of the video did fail, and it did not we just did a terrible demo of setting up a Kafka cluster. You could probably expect us to come out with a new video in the future where we set up the cluster correctly, but in this case we did not set it up correctly. It seemed to be working correctly, but ultimately when we shut down instances and did our testing, it did not behave the way it was supposed to, and I believe that our configurations are not. I believe it's just not set up correctly, and our instructions are wrong. So, just a heads up, you might want to watch this video anyways. It's kind of interesting, but if you want to see successfully set up cluster, then don't watch this video. Wait for our next video, or watch someone else's video, or just read the manual. But we did successfully set up a single instance for testing, which might work great on your dev workstation. And just the cluster part did not work successfully. The tests did not show that it was functioning the way that it should. So just full disclosure there. That's it, and let's jump right into this video. So this is our Kafka guide that I put together on the right side here in the browser. And anyways, today we're going to go through an example of how to install and set up a single test instance setup of Kafka, so one instance just for testing. But then we are also going to set up a simple 3-node server, or 3-node cluster, and this is going to we're going to do this all on a single host. Now we could also set up the cluster with 3 separate hosts, but we're going to just show you how you could do this on one system in case you only have one system available. I guess the use case is a developer workstation, where you only have your one workstation and you want to set up a 3-node cluster for testing on a single host. And it's ever so slightly easier on multiple hosts, but basically the same idea. Anyways, we're going to show you the basics of setting up Kafka. So I have a fresh server I'm logged into on the side here. So this server is called Server 1. So step 1 for setting up Kafka is going to be to download it. So let's see here. I don't think I actually even have Kafka on here. And the other thing you would do is you would want to verify it with the GPG keys. Let's see here. So you can go to Kafka Apache downloads, and I had a link right here in my guide. So this will take you to the same place basically. So you can go here and grab a binary download. Unless you care about the Scala version, just grab the latest greatest. You can get the ASC or the SHA checksums here to validate them. I'm going to grab this, and I'm not going to maybe I'll validate it. Well, let's see. So we're going to click on this and download it, but let me just I want to pull this directly to my server rather than to my desktop. So copy that link, and let's see if I can wget this from my server. So when I first tested this, I tested on my desktop, but yeah, here we go. I'd like to just pull this down to my server. So you can use the wget command. So you can right click on this link and say copy link address, and then in your server you can say wget and paste that. You can paste your the link to your tar.gz file that you got from here. So it's going to pull it from this mirror, and since you're pulling it down from any one of these mirrors, they may or may not be as trusted as if you go back here to apache.org. They may not be as trusted as apache.org. So you would probably want to grab the the signature of the file here and verify that you actually did get the correct file. So we're going to show you how to do that. You actually need the keys file, I believe, this right here. So copy link address, and this is going to take a little bit. So let me just, I'm going to cut out and come back when this is done downloading. All right, so we're back, and looks like it finished downloading. So let's see if we can do the same thing and pull down this key, just so we can verify the signature to make sure our file is not corrupted or maliciously tampered with. So wget, paste in the URL for the key, and that should work. All right. So in our current directory, we got, not sure what this was for. All right, anyways, that was from a previous video or test that I ran. But anyways, we've got this Kafka tar.gz file or tgz file and the keys file, which is a signature. So yeah, the key is going to look like this. This is a PGP key, I guess. And yeah, anyways, yeah, there we go. So next step, we're going to validate this this file. So we also need this ASC file. Copy link address, wget, paste, and pull that down. That comes down almost instantly because it's just a tiny signature. It's not the it's not the binary or anything. So I'm gonna run gpg import keys. Paste that in here, and there we go. Imported the keys, and all right. Anyways, let's try gpg verify and our binary that we downloaded. Paste this in here, and yeah. So it looks like issuer, good signature from, and warning, this key is not certified with a trusted signature. There is no indication that the signature belongs to the owner. So that's not ideal. All right, so looks like so that should have worked, but it looks like it didn't. So anyways, we could come back to that later, potentially. So moving along here. So let's pretend that did work for now. And all right, so the next step is to unpack our tar.gz file. So let's just unpack this, and there we go. So we have, all right, there's our, we unpacked it to this directory, and now we are going to, so a lot of the instructions like to tell you to cd into the Kafka directory and just run bin in the name of the command, which is a little bit tedious. It's not ideal. Now we're going to put this directory on the path, and without the funny thing is, it still requires you to be in the Kafka directory, but at least we don't have to type bin before the command. But it's still, for some of these commands, it still requires you to be in the Kafka directory, just because of it needs to be in that relative directory to reach some of the other things, unless you set up your environment a little bit further, and I haven't gone through and sorted that out yet. But in any case, you can export your path like that, and you can also put that in your bash RC. So I am going to let's see. I'm going to VI my bash RC file. I'm just going to make this smaller so I don't have to censor part of it out. vi.bash rc, and jump to the bottom here. And paste that in there. So, all right, so you would put that at the end of your bash rc file. And actually, you know what? That was completely unnecessary. That would have been necessary on my desktop because I have some aliases that I kind of like to keep, not make public. But I'm on a separate test server, so I actually don't even need to hide the bash rc. But anyways, yeah, so at the end of your bash rc, you can just paste this export command. So if you log in through a new terminal session, you will still have this set up on your path. So let's see. So now we could run. So we're going to jump into that Kafka directory, and we are going to start Zookeeper. So there's a script called Zookeeper server start, and you pass it this Zookeeper properties. So Kafka comes. Zookeeper is meant for cluster management, and Kafka comes with its own Zookeeper distribution packaged together with Kafka. Otherwise, you could set up your own Zookeeper cluster separately, and you might want to do that in a large production deployment. But for this case, it's convenient and nice that it just comes with Zookeeper. So you can run this command, and actually the interesting thing is that this is in the bin directory. If you look in bin, so this has a lot of the scripts that we'll use, but rather than typing bin, it's a little bit more convenient. It makes the documentation more concise. It would be nice if I set up some more environment variables so that we don't always have to be in the Kafka directory. Some things fail when we're not in the Kafka directory. All right, so first problem, we need Java to be installed. So I probably should have put this at the beginning, but so let's just install the default JDK package from Ubuntu, and yes. So hopefully this goes relatively quickly. Looks like this might take a little bit of time too, not too much. All right, so let's see. This is going kind of quick. Let me just cover what we're about to run, and then I'm gonna go ahead and run it while this is downloading. So so we're gonna run Zookeeper as our first thing that we start up. And then we are going to start another terminal, and we're going to launch Kafka server. So we're running Zookeeper and Kafka in the foreground, so we'll see all the output of what's going on. We won't even have to tail the log or anything. The funny thing is, normally you would run it as a daemon, but we're not running it as a daemon. We're just running it in the foreground in this case. Same thing with our dev cluster. In a real prod deployment or setting up an actual real lab, you would probably want to run it in the, as a daemon, of course, and certainly in production. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a topic called test, and then we are going to we're going to run a command to describe the topic, and then we're going to run this console producer test script to send a message. We're going to publish a message to our topic, and then in another terminal we're going to use a consumer to consume that message. So basically this will send the message and this will receive the message, and then we will so that's pretty much that. So let's open up another terminal while this is going. And it looks like it just finished, so we won't have to do this in parallel. We're going to need to log into this anyways. So sh server 1. All right, so over here we're gonna make this a bit smaller, and let's see here. Let's start our Zookeeper instance. So start Zookeeper up like this, And there we go. Zookeeper's running in the background. Now we're going to, in our other terminal, cd to the Kafka directory, and we are going to start up a single Kafka instance. So we're going to paste this here, using this default, server properties file, and start up a Kafka instance just like that. So there we go. We have Zookeeper starts first, and then Kafka, because Kafka depends on Zookeeper, and we now have these two instances running in. They're running in the foreground in these terminals. So we will need one more terminal. Well, we're going to need more than one more. We're going to need two more terminals. So we'll open a terminal here, and we will open yet another terminal down here. So we have Kafka up and running at the moment. So we're going to zoom in on this a little bit, zoom in on this guy a little bit, maybe zoom out a bit. All right, so all right, so there we go, a brand new server. So we're at this point, we started Zookeeper, we started the Kafka instance. Now we're going to jump into Kafka directory for both of these. And we are going to create a topic. So for the first terminal over here, this is more like the third terminal we've opened, Kafka topic, create topic, and the topic name is test, then dash bootstrap server, and we're going to specify the bootstrap server, and this would be our Kafka server that's running. So on the local host, which is the same system we're on right now, it is port 9092. That's the port that our Kafka server is running on. So we are going to create a topic on that Kafka server. So it says created topic test. Now we're going to describe that topic, which will give us details about the topic that we just created. So paste this command in, Kafka topics.sh, say describe, specify what topic. It's the test topic we just created, and specify the same server instance, which is on the local host. And it tells us that it has one partition count of 1, replication factor of 1, some other stuff about the segment bytes, the topic name, partitions, leaders, replicas, all 0 basically, except partition count is 1. We're going to check this later when we create a cluster, and we'll notice that it's going to be different. So anyways, so now that we've created that topic, let's run the producer, which will let's run this, and this is the Kafka console producer, and specify the topic, bootstrap server, and that's it. So run this, and you notice it's running and not doing much. So we could run 3. This is basically just waiting for us to give it messages. So test 1 is the first message, hit enter. Test 2 is the second message, right? So send those 2 messages. Now the next command we're going to run, Kafka console consumer. So we're going to grab this, paste it over here. This is basically the same thing as above, all the same parameters, except you're running the consumer. And you notice as soon as we started this consumer, it consumed 2 messages. And you could actually see this, the Kafka server instance in the background, some things scrolled in the logs. Anyways, doesn't matter. But you'll notice things are happening while it actually consumes it. So we sent 2 messages before even consuming them, and they just sat there on the topic until we start up a consumer, which consumes whatever happened to be on that topic, anything that was already published. It just pulled them right off. Now this consumer is going to sit here and just consume anything that gets sent to the topic as it comes in. But the first thing it did was take the backlog of messages, which was test 1 and test 2. So now that it's taken the backlog of messages that were pending on the topic, we can send some more things. So we can send test 3, send it, and just after we send it, it sends, you'll see the consumer gets that message. You can say test 4 and see that it receives test 4. You can just type in some random characters like this, and notice it gets those random characters. So basically, anytime you hit enter, that's a new message that will be sent over. So yeah, you can leave it sitting there. The message doesn't become a message until you hit enter, and then it gets sent over to your consumer. So that's how these test scripts work. You have a producer that produces messages. They get sent out to the topic, sit there on the topic until a consumer comes along and consumes those messages. So, and I probably should have talked about key concepts of Kafka. So I guess I'll scroll up to the top and go over those now. I should have done this at the beginning of the video, but a topic is basically like a category of, or a feed. So you could kind of think of it similar to a queue, but it's different. Basically, you could have multiple consumers that pull from a topic and multiple producers that produce to it. So a producer basically sends to a topic, and a consumer receives from the topic, and a broker is the Kafka instance or the Kafka cluster. And there's some Kafka use cases that we went over. We're not going to cover that in this video. That's not really what we meant to cover in this video. So anyways, that's basically it. That's the demo of our of how to set up a single Kafka instance. The next thing we'll want to do is set up a simple Kafka cluster setup. Now, if you want to shut this down, you can hit Control-C on this consumer, Control-C on this on the producer, and then you're going to want to shut these down in order. First, shut down Kafka, Control-C to shut down Kafka that's running in the foreground, and eventually it shuts down. And then where's Zookeeper? Zookeeper should be right here. Shut this guy down too, and there we are. We're good. All right. Actually, not sure why I had this. This is just an extra terminal I had open. I am actually going to need a few more terminals to create our cluster. So I'm not going to open those up yet, though. Or you know what? I'm going to open these terminals, and I'm going to sort them so they're going to be kind of in order. All right, so these first three terminals are going to be we're going to run 3 Kafka server instances in the foreground, similar to how we just did. So I guess first thing we're going to do, jump into the Kafka directory on each of these terminals. Let's see, right here, jump into the Kafka directory just so we're ready. And we are then going to copy this config server properties over. We're going to create 2 more files, config server 1 and 2. So the regular server.properties is going to be for our first instance. That's the default one we used when we ran a single instance. Now, normally we would just use this same thing if we were running these on separate servers. We wouldn't have to change this so much. But since we're running these on on the same server, we're gonna have to use a different port for each instance. Normally you would just use the same port and put them on separate hosts. But if you're running them all on the same host, they each need to use a separate port, and you have to put that in the config file. So we're creating new config files. I mean, you would need separate config files anyways, because all right, so basically what goes in the config file, we'll show you that. So let's VI this file, and this is not good. Oh, you know what? That's funny actually. So I'm on server 1, and I don't want to. All right, so everything's on server 1 except these 2 terminals right here. This is a good thing I caught this. This would cause some chaos. So these 2 new terminals that I opened, these are on my local desktop, and I actually happen to have a Kafka instance running there, which we don't want to work with. We want to work with the one on the server. So SSH into the server on both of these. All right, and we are going to need to CD back into that Kafka directory on both of those terminals. All right, so same deal on this one. All right, so let's go through these. So each one, this is on server 1, server 1, server 1, server 1, server 1, and server 1. So all our terminals are logged into server 1. That's exactly what we want. I'm going to recopy these two files over. So copy these two files over to create two new properties files. And let's edit that first properties file. So we're going to copy this and VI it. And let's see here. So VI this config file. Now you're going to notice there's a lot of stuff in here. Let's just make this a bit bigger just to look at it. Now there's a lot of comments in here and a few other config things. There are a few other things that we're just going to leave alone, like the segment size and the log retention, check interval, a lot of different parameters. We're just going to leave them alone. So this is a large file, but if you look over here in our document, there's only three things you need to pay attention to. There's the broker ID. So each node or instance that we're running is going to have a different broker ID. Now we're going to need to set that regardless of whether they run on the same physical server or on you could run each instance on a separate server. You still need to give them a different ID. Now you could use the same path to the config file if these were all on separate servers, but you'd still have to edit the file on each server. Since these are on the same server and they all need a different ID, we do need to create different config files. So server properties is for the first instance, server 1 properties is for the second instance, and server 2 properties for the third instance. So each one is going to need a new ID number, and each one is also going to need a new port number since they're running on the same server. They could use all the same port if they're on separate servers, as I mentioned before. Now each one is going to need a different log directory. Now, because you don't want them, each instance, writing to the same log directory and overwriting each other's data. That just wouldn't work. It would be a conflict. Now, if we were running these all on separate hosts like you would in production, you would not need to change the port and you would not need to change the log directory unless you happen to want to put it in a different log directory of your choosing, or you want to change the port for some other reason. But the only thing you would normally have to change is the broker ID. Now that's the first thing we're going to change here. So we're going to set broker ID. See, it's 0 by default for the first instance. So for the second instance, we're going to set it to 1. And see, before we leave this file, let's change the port. All right, where is the port specified? Let's see, port equals. Is this even specified in here? You know, it does not appear that it is, so I'm just going to place it right here. So I believe it just takes that port by default, so we're going to override that port with our own port like this. And then the logdir, I'm betting log.dir right here. Logdirs, all right, logdir or log temp Kafka logs. So, let's see here. So config server properties. Yeah, I believe it's logdirs with an S and not logdir. And what else? So port. Yeah, and I believe I wiped out my other configs on my desktop. So anyways, logdirs, we're going to change that to, we're going to add a 1 on there. All right, and then we are going to do server 2 properties. So broker ID has to change to 2. Whoops. And we are going to specify a port, and this time it's going to be 1 number higher. So just increment it to 9094. And we are going to And what are we going to call? Yeah, just add a number 2 at the end of this directory, and there we go. Oh, one thing I should have mentioned after setting up the initial test instance, once you shut Kafka down, if you want to delete all your data, like any of topics that you create, when you start Kafka back up, those topics will still exist. So if you wanted to test out creating a topic and you still want to name it the same thing like test, it'll say error, this already exists. But if you want to just blow away all your work and start fresh, you can delete all your data by removing everything in your Kafka logs directory, which so Kafka logs with an S, not Kafka log. So you have temp Kafka logs and temp Zookeeper. So wipe out those 2 directories and you will be so like this, and that will wipe out everything and start fresh. Now, other thing worth mentioning, if you wanted to do that with a clustered version, you would actually need to wipe out everything inside these directories, temp Kafka logs 1 and 2. So if we wanted to wipe it out after after setting up a cluster. All right, so anyways, moving right along here. Let's see. So yeah, you would need to clear out all these directories in a clustered instance. So anyways, now that we've got that squared away, that's really all you have to do. Each cluster instance is going to need its own config file. And now to start the instances, let's start out with this first terminal here. We are going to run Kafka server start, and you actually don't have to put bin. I should update my document here, but you can just say Kafka server start, and we are starting the first instance, so we specify that first config file. Actually, this is the second instance. The -1 is the second instance, and I guess now we start up this. So we started the second instance here. Let's start the third instance in this terminal, and let's start our original instance in this terminal right here. So I guess this is assuming we left our instance running. Oh, you know what? This is actually all wrong. This should be this is gonna fail because Zookeeper is not running. So I'm doing this wrong. Don't do what I did. So let's start with the first. So let's see. We have 3 terminals, and we have yet another terminal, and another terminal, and another. So we only need 2 terminals to send things. So this first terminal, first thing we need to not forget. So I guess following right along with this guide is assuming that you left the cluster running, or that you left this original instance running, and all you have to do is create 2 new instances with new config files and start those up. So what we're going to want to do is come back to here. We're going to start up Zookeeper again, which we need. So start Zookeeper right there. Start our first Kafka instance first. So we got Zookeeper, Kafka, and now we can scroll back down to our cluster configuration section, and we can run this. Run our second Kafka instance, and run our third Kafka instance right here. So we now have 3 instances of Kafka up and running. So 1, 2, 3, and Zookeeper all up and running. Now we have these 2 terminals that we can use to create so we did wipe the data out, so we can now create a new topic again. So let's just look at what's running though. Zoo. So we'll see a few zoo related processes, and the output is going to be huge. We could zoom. Wow, that's just a lot of output. Yeah, Java processes tend to they tend to have a lot of see this each there's a few processes running, and each one you can tell where the process stops because you see this little gap here. But yeah, Java processes tend to have like every single jar file that they include or library or directory is listed in the output for the actual process. So you'll see them all as parameters, and it's this huge big long mess. But that's how it generally looks with Java files. So anyways, we're going to zoom back in here. That's if you grep for Zookeeper, I guess it's going to show up when you run your. That's going to find your Kafka instances also. So anyways, no point in looking at that now. We know we have them all running. It's messy output, but they are there. And you could look at it if you really wanted to troubleshoot them. So all right, so we have everything running. We are going to describe a topic. So I guess this is assuming that we that we had created another topic or something. So I'm going to scroll up to the top here and use the same commands that we used before to create a new topic. So copy this and create the topic here. There we go, topic created. And let's see, Kafka console. So let's produce some data. And I just ran the consumer, didn't I? Yeah, that was. So actually create the topic rather than just try to send to it. All right, so create the topic. We can describe the topic. Basically what we saw before. And yeah, that's basically we can run we are going to produce some data, produce messages over here, and we are going to consume them over here. So same thing as before, test 1, and test 1 comes through, so we see we're sending messages and consuming them. All right, so that's all working as expected, but for demonstration purposes, for all anybody knows, we could still just only be using that first instance, and for all we know, those two other instances are just sitting there doing nothing. So we kind of want to demonstrate that they are doing something. So let's see if we can do that. So describe. All right, so this is actually wrong in my documentation. This will need some fixing, but we could actually create the. You know what I'm going to do for this? I'm going to need to fix this document, but so you can specify the replication factor, and that's what it was. This command was meant to be. So this is kind of a typo here, but replication factor. All right, so what we're going to do is create a new topic. So this is what we should have done was so we're going to create topic test 2. When we recreate, we cleaned everything out, and we should have created a new topic called topic test with the replication factor that we want, but we failed to do that. So in any case, we are going to type in replication factor 3 here. So we're going to create a new topic called test 2 with replication factor 3. And now that we've done that, we are going to describe that topic. So let's first describe topic 2, and you'll notice replication factor 1 and so on and so forth. But if you do the same for a topic called test 2, you're going to notice that the replication factor is now set to 3. So this topic, and it's using leader 2, and it has number of replicas is 2, whereas this first topic we created has 1 replica. Now we have 2 replicas. So 2 replicas, it's using a different leader, and it has a replication factor of 3. That means our topic has been replicated to to all of the nodes in our cluster. And so so we want to test this a little bit better. So we are going to let's try publishing to let's run this producer, but instead of sending it to test, we're going to send it to test 2. We're going to still be sending these to. Notice one of the parameters was the bootstrap server, localhost 9092. That's our first instance. So we're going to connect our producer and send messages to the first instance, right? Using topic 2. That's the one that has the replication factor of 3. So we're going to run this, and let's see here. We are going to run the consumer also, but for the consumer, we are going to we're going to hit topic 2, and to start out with, we're going to pull from 9092, which is the first instance, right? Just to test this out. So we can send some data, and data is received. All right, that's all fine and great. So hit Control-C on the consumer here, and let's try running this on, instead of port 9092, which is the first instance, let's try port 9093. Now we can connect to this port and consume from it, and notice first thing it did when we started to consume from that was pull in the backlog of messages, and now we can send things. We're sending to the first node in the cluster, and we receive from the second node in the cluster. We can hit Control-C, and we can connect back to that same node, and first thing it does is give us the backlog. Now let's try connecting to the third node in the cluster. That's 9094. So hit enter here, and there we go. Got the backlog, and say test 1, 2, 3, and send it, and we received it. So we're sending to the first node and receiving on the third node. Now we could hit Control-C on this producer, and we could connect this to port, let's say 93. So 9093. So we're listening. So our consumer is on 9094, which is the third node, and our producer is on 9093, which is the second node. Now we are able to send to a different. See, we can send our messages to the second node in the cluster, and we're still able to consume them from the third node in the cluster. So this demonstrates some cluster functionality. Now let's open up another terminal here. Yet another terminal. We have enough terminals open, but yeah, let's just open one more here and zoom in a bit here. Make sure we SSH to server 1. All right, so let's see here. We are going to let's connect to this on the let's connect back to the first node. So copy this command, and let's connect to 9092. So we're connecting one producer to 9092, and another producer is already connected to 9093. So that's our first and second node on the cluster. Now let's open still yet another terminal and SSH to server 1, and let's run another consumer here. Now we're consuming on the third node in the cluster, but let's say if we were to consume off of the second node in the cluster. So make this a 3. All right. So this, and there we go. We got the backlog. So this guy is consuming off of the third node. This one's this is consuming off of the second node, the third node. So we have 2 consumers right here, and we have 2 producers right here. The producers are on the first and the second node, and the consumers are on the second and the third node. Any case, what we can send from either of these producers, and it will be received by both of these consumers at the same time. So let's open up this, go to this producer right here and say test from, let's say, producer 1. Test from producer 1. And that is not right. So we should be seeing that on both of those. So test from producer 2. Am I using the correct topic? Something's not going right here. And I was planning on breaking other things and just showing what happens, but all right, so this does not seem right. All right, so we have you know what? Let's just kill one of these. Let's just kill each one of these and see what happens. All right, so let's start up this producer, and let's start up this consumer. All right, okay, looks like as soon as I started this, it received both messages. All right, so test 1. All right, so we can start up. Say if we start up 2 consumers, does it like having 2 consumers run? Looks like this one pulled everything it was supposed to. So we can say test 2. And okay, so we have 1 producer sending to the second instance, and we have 2 consumers on the third and the second instance. So we have 2 consumers running and 1 producer. Test 3. Anything we send from this 1 producer gets sent to both of these consumers, just like that. So say test 5, whatever, it gets sent to both of these. So that's kind of nice. Now if we start another producer, I believe this might be where it was. So let's say test 6, and oh, look, there we go. Looks like it works. So it was getting hung up on something before. I'm not sure what, but it was getting stuck before. Send this message from here, and so this producer can send this message, and it comes out on both of these consumers. This one can send a message, hey, this is a message, and we'll see it comes out on both of these consumers. So yeah, there we go. We have 2 producers connected to 2 separate Kafka instances, and no matter which of these producers sends the message, both of these consumers will receive the message, and both of these consumers are on different Kafka instances running on the same physical host. So that's our cluster in action. We noticed the replication factor. We can change the replication factor, and we can also, we can connect to any node in the cluster. So that kind of shows some of our cluster functionality. Now, what if we were to take one of our Kafka instances and hit Control-C to just shut it down? So I shut down instance This is instance 3 right here. So I was on, so both of these none of these producers are on instance 3. This consumer, I believe, was, all right, this was on instance 2, and this one was on instance 3. So this one should fail. This one was, they both received, both consumers received an error, right? Or received a warning, but that's actually strange that this one stays connected. But let's see how they behave. Let's send a, oops, yeah, that's not valid. Test 1. Let's just send a message and see if, all right, that is very strange that both of those are able to receive that. Unless I'm just not using the same port here. Server 2 is shut down. I believe this consumer must have been, so this is interesting behavior. So it looks like this consumer that was pointing to port 9094 by default, I believe that just that must have that must be pointing. I don't know enough about Kafka cluster behavior, but it looks like it automatically switched over to a different node. Broker may not be available, so we have a warning about it. Could not be established, so that's interesting. So we have a warning about not being able to connect, and it appears that this consumer just automatically switched over to another node, and that both of these are still able to receive data, which is great and all, but I was actually expecting this one to fail because I connected directly to that, but if it did, I guess that wouldn't be a very good cluster. Let's see what happens if we shut down another node in the cluster so that we only have one running. So shut this guy down. Now we only have one node in the cluster running. The cluster shouldn't be functional, but let's just see what happens. Let's say this is a test that shouldn't work. Okay, it still works. So apparently we can still send messages with only one node in the cluster running. This cluster should have stopped working right away. So, all right, this is down, and yeah, that's interesting. All right, well, you know what? I'm going to shut down the last node in the cluster and just watch this fail. So there we go. Cluster is completely down. So there we go. Looks like these clients are smart enough to try to connect to one of the nodes in the cluster. So now they're just giving errors consistently. Yeah, it looks like I can't send anything either, even if I'm quick about it. All right, so say if I start one node up, these will probably come back and start working automatically. So we started one node in the cluster, and there we go, connected. So both of these consumers and producers automatically connect back so long as any one node in the cluster is up. So I can say test, and both of these get that test message. Test. So both of them can send. All right, so let's say if we shut this down to break our cluster again. All right, there we go. Finally, this is down. So we shut down this node and our cluster is broken. Let's start up this node right here. So starting up a random node, and let's see our cluster start working again. These are going to reconnect once this is fully loaded. They should reconnect. Don't tell me they all need that first node and this is not really running as a cluster. Alright, so that's not expected. I was expecting that to just work. Start up this instance. And now they start working. So it looks like they need that first instance to be working. All right, so we have all three nodes running. There's an error on the second one, and apparently we can send from. So everything's producers and consumers seem to be working, and let's see here. So say if we just killed this first instance and leave the other two running, it looks like, all right, so we have an error. Yeah, that does not seem to work for us. All right, so looks like this is not a good cluster. It's really relying on one node. We can connect to any of the nodes in the cluster, but ultimately it's really just relying on that first node, and if the first node goes down, it doesn't work at all. So this is actually a terrible example of a cluster, but and this really isn't functioning as a cluster or as it should function at all. But yeah, so I guess the takeaway from this entire video is that you know, hopefully someone learns something from watching me do this, but this is not the way you would set this up. You could expect us to potentially come out with a better video in the future showing how to actually set up a correct cluster. For now though, this is how not to set up a Kafka cluster, and you know, in the future, you could expect us to set one up correctly. I don't know if that's going to be right away or in a little while, but we will eventually come out with a correctly configured cluster that works the way it should, and do a bunch of tests and prove that it actually is working and functioning correctly as a cluster. So if you found this interesting, you know, give us a thumbs up. Or if you were disappointed with how this video went, you know, feel free to give us a thumbs down. That works too. If you want to see more stuff like this, most of which works way better than this demo, you know, definitely hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell icon so you know when we come out with a new video. Yeah, most of our videos go a lot more smoothly than this. This is actually a terrible example. This kind of really fell apart when we did the you know, we just did not set this cluster up correctly. So yeah, just do be aware of that. And yeah, most of our videos, some of our videos are failures, and they are labeled as such. And some are, most of them go very smoothly, and sometimes we have to work through issues, but usually it's not a disaster like this. So either way, if you want to see more videos like this one, or more videos where things actually work, you might want to hit the subscribe button. If you find this type of content interesting, we cover a lot of tech related content, so definitely, feel free. You're definitely going to benefit from subscribing to the channel. And that's pretty much it for today. Hopefully you found this useful, if not interesting at least. And that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and we will see you guys next time.